Hello and welcome to this video. And on this video I'm going to be going through 10 albums that are guilty pleasures of mine. Right, so here we go. I'm just looking at myself now. I'm going to have my hair cut tomorrow, so I apologise for sort of the real mad professor hair style. Well, you know, when I go back over my videos I find that my hair just seems to change so rapidly on this channel. It's very strange, you know, and I worry about this because I want to appear cool to everybody, and I don't feel particularly cool today because I have this sort of Einsteinian hair going on. You know, on the next video, hopefully I will have it all cut neat and I will hopefully look cooler, because that's what we all want to be, isn't it? We all want to be cool. Right, and so often when we say certain albums, certain bands, certain artists we like, we want to come across as liking something cool, something that gives us cred. But the truth is, right, a little bit like my hair right now, as you can see, you may also find yourself liking albums that are equivalent to my current hair status, and that's quite interesting, I find. Now, I've put together a list of 10 albums here. I've also at the end I'm going to go through some honourable mentions, because there's a ton of these albums. There's just so many to choose from, and some of these albums are very, very important in my life. You know, these have been formative albums. So I'm going to start off with the CDs, and then we're going to move to the vinyl. So the first album I've pulled out is Synchronized by Jamar. I'm a huge fan of Jamar, and I do feel guilty about it. You know, to my ears, Jamar, a very funky pop group with incredible chord changes, taking a lot of influences from, you know, jazz fusion and jazz funk. There's some incredible musicianship there. JK is an incredible front person in terms of his voice, which is very iconic, and also his performance style, which is also incredibly iconic. So they've created a raft of incredible songs, and yet Jamar never seemed to have the kudos of so many other bands. You know, it's like they emerged in the 90s, but nobody thinks of them in the same breath as they do, say, a Radiohead, you know, or perhaps a Blur. You know, they seem to be much more over in the public perception on the cheesy end, and I don't think they're cheesy at all. Now, on top of that, you can get kudos with Jamar by saying that your favourite album is the second album, Return of the Space Cowboy, which is a bit more muso and instrumental. But my favourite album is this one, and this is the one that contains Canned Heat. That's the big single off here. At this point, they're moving more towards dance music. It's actually more poppy. I shouldn't like it as much, but I just do, and I think the reason is because at this point in 1999 they were at the peak of their powers. There's a wonderful joy about this album. They're at the top of their game. There's all sorts of different things going on, and I think on this one, if I'm not mistaken, does this one have the theme to Godzilla, Going Deeper Underground? Let's have a look at the track, because on the back it says no. No, it's not. Because my favourite song by Jamar, this is how uncool I am, really. I bought Too Young to Die the day it came out. I was into Jamar before they had their first album out. And even though I could say that and pull that out, my favourite song by them is the theme to Godzilla, Going Underground, which is about the most uncoolest one you could like. I just love them. There's something great about them, right? So that's my first choice at number 10. And I've made sure I own all these albums. I didn't want to put any graphics up because I wanted you to realise, yes, he actually does own these albums. He's not just making this up because it's funny. So all these albums I actually own and I listen to. So the next album that I want to put forward in my guilty pleasures is The Magic of Doris Day. This is actually a best of CD that contains all her incredible songs. Wherever Will Be, Perhaps, Move Over Darling, Pillow Talk, Teacher's Pet, right? I love Doris Day. I absolutely love her. I think she's one of the great artists, and I think she does not get the credit she deserves. Right, this lady was a beautiful lady, you know, with film stars looks. She was an incredible actor, capable of bringing out brilliant performances under directors like Alfred Hitchcock, and she was a brilliant musical performer with what's it called, the cowboy one, where she plays the lady cowboy. Calamity Jane is one of my favourite films, and that's all brilliant. What people don't see, they don't use their ears. Listen to Doris Day. Doris Day is not a musical theatre singer, she's a jazz singer, and she started out in the big bands in the 1940s. On this disc, there's actually a couple of tunes, here, Close Your Eyes, which is taken from the jazz album she made with the Andre Previn trio. Now, Andre Previn, again, is another guy that gets misrepresented because we all know him as a great, classical composer. But in the 50s, he was making some really great jazz. He did stuff with Shelley Mann. And the jazz tracks, this Close Your Eyes, it's absolutely excellent jazz singing. And I hear her, that quality in her voice, the beautiful phrasing, the beautiful tone, the lilt, the swing that she's got. I hear that even if she's singing something like Que Sera, it's a beautiful voice, and it's one of my favourite voices. And I think Doris Day is an absolutely incredible artist that went right across the board. But I think if she just stayed as a jazz singer, she would have, had a lot of kudos just for that. So that's what I got on number 9, is The Magic of Doris Day. Right, yes, so I know a lot of people who watch this channel aren't rap fans, they're not hip-hop fans, and I'm a big hip-hop fan. I started off, because I'd come out from the new wave of British heavy metal and then got into prog and fusion. I tried to fight against rap and hip-hop. And I've told the story many a times that I heard Public Enemy, and that changed me. This was heavy music, serious music, and of course, Public Enemy are one of those groups that we can say, I'm really into Public Enemy. I've got the first 3 albums plus the Def Jam sample. So I could pull out some cool kudos by saying I've got those albums, and I got them at the time. But I've lied a little bit, because my journey into hip hop doesn't start with Public Enemy. I said that just to sound cool. It actually starts with Tone Loc. Now, Tone Loc is not one of the coolest rappers to like. In 1980, when would it have been? Late 80s, 87, something like that, he brought out the first album, which is called Loked After Dark, and it has the 2 incredible singles, Wild Thing and Funky Cold Medina. He's got that gruff, deep, sonorous voice, and the thing I loved about that album is it was pulling samples from Eddie Van Halen, right? And I'd got into the Beastie Boys as well, but my guy was Tone Loc. Now, he made 2 albums, and then he's gone into voiceover work. He's appeared in Ace Ventura and all that sort of thing, which isn't the coolest thing to be if you want to be a cool rapper. But I'm not even going to pull out the cooler album, which is the first one. I'm going to bring out the second album, which I absolutely loved. This is an incredible album. It's got Funky West Side on it. It's got Mean Green on it, Freaky Behaviour. And here he pulls in, and I think, what year was this? This must be about 1990. Now, of course, my knowledge of these, 1991. When he came up with this album, there was a really strong funkiness to this album, especially in the samples, and I absolutely love this. I have played this album to death. This was the album, really, that took me over towards, like, Jill Scott, Michelle Ndegeocello, all of Brand Nubian, Diggable Planets, all that sort of funky early 90s jazz, like Jazz Mataz, Guru, all that type of stuff. But for me, it started out here with the wonderful Tone Loc. There he is with the fist, right, looking very serious with his glasses on. I love this album. A guilty pleasure. Right, this one is probably even more left field than Tone Loc, and I absolutely love this band, and I think this is a very, very important band in terms of British music history, and I don't think they get the credit, and they are an incredible band, and they are, of course, the great Chaz and Dave. Right, now some of the American viewers and viewers in other countries might not know who Chaz and Dave are, but Chaz and Dave were the purveyors of a sort of pop music that was built around sort of Cockney knees up songs. Right, their hit singles were things like Rabbit, Gertcha, these are incredible songs. What else have we got in here? The sideboard songs, Poor Old Mr. Woogie, Massage Parlour, Bored Stiff, Ain't No Pleasing You. Now, Ain't No Pleasing You is an example of incredible songwriting. I'm serious here. I am not joking. Right? Chaz and Dave emerged in the 60s sort of playing in that sort of English soul crossover world. You know, they got fingers in the pies of progressive rock and jazz rock and a whole bunch of stuff, and they're serious players. They hit a problem which the progressive rock musicians hit, which is how do you make rock music which is not reliant on American music forms, because it's a bit dishonest, doing a Led Zeppelin, sit there, singing an old Willie Dixon song when you're a middle-class guy from West Bromwich. Sorry, Roberts. That's something that's, you have to take on board. And even bands like Led Zeppelin and Cream, they found a way of winding their Englishness in. So when we listen to Cream's first single was Wrapping Paper, which has Chaz and Dave overtones. This is something that comes out. Chaz and Dave, musically, are fundamentally coming out of Jerry Lee Lewis. It's not English music, but they've taken that sort of piano rock and roll of Jerry Lee Lewis and they've made it English. And they made it English by sort of putting it together with the sort of Cockney comedy songs, They're absolutely brilliant. Now, Chaz Hodgetts, before he did all this, he actually turned up for a session for Labby Sifri on a tune called I Got The ... And that is a hell of a funky track. And you can hear how funky these guys are. And Chaz Hodgetts came up with a riff that goes ba-dum, ba-dum, ga-dum, ga-dum, get back, down, good. That's Chaz Hodgetts from Chaz and Dave. He wrote that riff, which was then sampled by Eminem for his first single, My Name Is, right? This is how funky and important Chaz and Dave are. Without Chaz and Dave, we would not have Eminem. What was that? Number 6, was it? So we're going to move over to the vinyl now. What have I got on the vinyl? I'm going to have to lean down to here. Oh, hang on. I'm sure I've made an error here, haven't I? I've got this album's here. Right, so I've got those two there. And I've got... I've done my back in, you see, today. Now, these here... These are my honourable mentions, so where the hell have I put all the proper albums? What the hell have I done? They're behind me. I'm ailing today, so I hope you appreciate the fact that even I can hardly move and my back's gone. I have made my way down here to do a video for you. I didn't want to miss you. So here we're at 5, 4, 3, 2... No, this is number 6, isn't it? Right, usually when I hold an album up, I've got something to say. With this album, which is one of my favourite albums, I absolutely love it, I don't know anything about this album. So this is the first on my channel. I'm going to hold an album up and then you knowledgeable people will be able to tell me about it. I bought it in a charity shop many years ago. I took it home and it blew me away. And it is this album. The Singers Unlimited, and the album's called A Cappella. And whoever these people are here, they sing completely a cappella, and they do like Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell. There's Michelle by Lennon and McCartney, Full on the Hill by Paul McCartney. A whole bunch of incredibly beautiful a cappella vocals. Now you're going to see that one of my guilty pleasures is harmony vocals. It's going to crop up on this channel. This is absolutely wonderful. Now there are some notes on this, and it does tell you a little bit about this band. Scarcely known in the UK as yet, the Singers Unlimited have nevertheless made a considerable impact in Germany, where they have made a number of albums for the MPS label. Ooh, MPS label, that's the label that George Duke was on, but also produced a whole bunch of incredible psychedelic jazz rock in the late 60s, early 70s, things like the Dave Pike Trio. Incredible label. That's quite interesting now. The group were formed in Chicago 5 years ago, and that was in 1971, so around about 1966. Yes. When the two former High Loss, Gene Perling and Don Shelton, teamed up with Len Dresler and Bonnie Herman. Now I've heard of Bonnie Herman. She's a singer that I'm aware of. Where? I don't know. All four of them had been doing commercials for beer, cigarettes and airlines and coffee, and had never recorded anything longer than 60 seconds. Then, just for fun, Gene Perlin created an arrangement for Lennon and McCartney's song Fall on the Hill using very effective multi-tracking. The group taped it in Chicago when there was some spare time at the end of a session, and there the matter might have rested, except sometime later, while Oscar Peterson was in Chicago playing at the London House, a friend of Perling's invited Oscar to hear the tape. Oscar Peterson flipped, contacted MPS, to whom he was under contract, and the result was an exclusive contract, and this is their very first album. So they obviously came out of another group called the Hi-Lows. It was the Hi-Lows, which broke up in 1964. You see, I can read it out here and pretend like I know what I'm saying. But anyway, I knew nothing of that, and I didn't know the Oscar Peterson connection. It's wonderful. That's this brilliant album. So that's what I've got at number 6. Right, at number 5, I have this. This is actually a 12-inch I've pulled out, but I've got the album as well. But just to prove to you how much I love this album when it came out, I have pulled out the 12-inch as well for a reason. So, at number 5, I've got Power Station. Right, so this was a spin-off from Duran Duran that came out in sort of about 85, I would imagine. And the lineup was John Taylor and Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and Robert Palmer from Robert Palmer, and Tony Thompson, who was a drummer from Chic. This is an incredibly produced album. It's got a certain sound to it, and that sound is also the sound that you hear when you listen to Robert Palmer's huge single from the 1980s, Addicted to Love. It's a certain sound, and for me that's reliant on the incredible, the late great Tony Thompson, who throughout the 80s was one of my favourite drummers. And the way he played the drums and the production on this is mind-blowing. It's a great big roomy sound, like it's almost like a Bonham sound, but he's playing so tight, it's completely unlike the Chic sound. That Bonham sound was so incredible that he was then picked up to play drums at Live Aid when Led Zeppelin reformed. And although Phil Collins gets the blame for that, I'm pretty sure it's Tony Thompson, who perhaps wasn't as aware of all those Led Zeppelin classics as someone else might have been, who I think pretty much destroyed that performance for them, although I think there was other things going on. When I played with Robert Plant, I can remember Robert saying that Tony Thompson, that his fills used to go out of time, and I don't think they did. I think what it was is there's a certain way of playing the drums which comes from sort of soul funk. You know, it's a much blacker way of playing the drums, you know, where you sort of you catch the end of the fills, you sort of anticipate the beginning of the bar, which Tony Thompson was an absolute master of. The drums on this is incredible. The reason why I got the 12-inch, because on this remix you get this big drum, you know, sort of mashup of all these toms and things. It's absolutely incredible. This is a huge influence on me. The other thing about this album is when I bought this, Andy Taylor, who I just thought was a sort of pretty boy in Duran Duran, I'd never really rated Duran Duran, and then John Taylor, and especially Andy Taylor's guitar playing, I thought was wonderful. Andy Taylor is suffering with cancer at the moment, and I think there's been a groundbreaking treatment. I think he's got prostate cancer, and that has really helped him. And at the weekend, I think Robert Plant went up and performed Stairway to Heaven for him. And so there we have another connection to Led Zeppelin and Robert Plant. If you're a Zepp fan, check this album out, because it's very Zeppy. No one ever says it, but that's Power Station. Right. This is a monumental album for me, which I think is at number 4, isn't it? A monumental album, one of the most important albums in my development. I've talked about it on the channel before, but it is a guilty pleasure, and it is Extensions by Manhattan Transfer. As you can see, I love vocal harmonies. I got this before I heard Weather Report, and it opens up with a vocal version of Birdland. It absolutely blew me away. At the time when I got this, because this is actually one of my dad's albums, right? So my dad bought this. I'm listening to things like Angel Witch and Tigers of Pantang, right? Early 80s, I've just started drumming. He buys like this cruddy Manhattan Transfer that seems like a real middle of the road. So I go to prove to myself how easy this stuff is, and I stick it on and I try and learn the drum beats to it, and I was completely flummoxed. The drummers on here are, if we just go through the lineup, we've got Ralph Humphrey, the late great Ralph Humphrey. I did the last ever interview with Ralph, and I was very pleased to be able to show him this album and tell him how much this was meant to me. We've got Jeff Porcaro on here. We've got who else is playing? I think that might be on the. I think Alex Acuna's on here at one point playing drums. Yeah, he's on the Shaker song, which is a sort of really Latin American. There's just so many styles, and it's so brilliantly done. And as a kid, trying to learn this album and trying to get the drum beat to Birdland down, and then there's a track on here called Nothing You Can Do About It, which is a sort of Purdy shuffle when you'd expect Jeff Porcaro's playing it, but it's actually Ralph Humphrey. That is where I learnt my halftime shuffle from. Is not from Rosanna or Fall in the Rain. It was from Nothing You Can Do About It, which was written by Jay Graydon with Ralph Humphrey on drums. What a drummer that guy was. You've got Jeff Porcaro in the studio to do a halftime shuffle, probably the greatest drummer in the halftime shuffle, and Ralph steps up and just kills it. Absolutely brilliant. So that's what I've got now. As I've spoken about this album so often, just to prove to you, oh, my back. Hang on. My elbows are falling on the floor. I can't lean down and my back's gone. Oh, do you hear it cracking then? Did you hear it? Have I got it on video? How bloody painful this is. Oh, so I own other Manhattan Transfer albums. I've got the Alive album. They were phenomenal. Right, they are absolutely phenomenal. Let's see who the lineup is on here. So we've got nobody I've heard of. I won't even read it. That is obviously their touring band. But another album I really liked, and it was probably their most successful album. Right, because this video is turning into a bit of a Manhattan Transfer tribute, was this one, Pastiche. That was the big hit record because it had Love for Sale. Oh no, it was Walk in Love. What was the big hit singles? Right, I think it was Walk in Love, which starts off with side 2. This is the last one with the original singer. She left after this and they brought in another singer. I'm trying to make it out like I know what I'm talking about here. But the lineup's insane. This is where I first came across sort of jazz fusion musicians on these Manhattan Transfer albums. We got Randy Brecker on here. We've got Steve Gadd, he's on here. Don Grolnick is on here. Jim Gordon, he's on here. You know, Jim Gordon was the drummer with Derek and the Dominoes, who actually wrote the piano part of Layla, who in 1983 had a schizophrenic episode and ended up bludgeoning and then stabbing his mother to death. And since 1983 he was in various prisons. Why he didn't go to a mental asylum I don't know, and he died this year, Jim Gordon. And it's a drummer that you know, we played with people like Frank Zappa, really important drummer, and he's on a lot of the tracks. He's a really great drummer. Jeff Porcaro's on here, Jay Graydon's on here, Donald Duck Dunn's on here, Booker T. Jones is on here, Richard T. This is a hell of an album. It opens up with a track called The Four Brothers, which is a Jimmy Jeffrey, John Hendricks song, which I think may have been, was it Woody Herman's big band? I'm out of my depth here. I'd say I don't know about this stuff because this is not my field of knowledge. But I think Woody Herman opened up with Four Brothers, which featured Four Brothers on the brass section with this incredible arrangement of the saxophones and whatever. And we've got on here Al Cohn, Lou Delgato, Jimmy Jeffrey and Lee Konitz, who all could well be the Four Brothers. I'm making this up if I go here. They could well be the Four Brothers, and they weren't brothers, but they were called the Four Brothers because they were so tight in perhaps Woody Burt Herman's band, or maybe it was Stan Kenny. I don't know. I absolutely don't know, to be honest. But those saxophone parts are then transferred onto vocal parts and they sing it a cappella, and it's an incredible thing. If you want to hear Manhattan Transfer, you know, just when this video finishes, go and Google Four Brothers by Manhattan Transfer and listen to what they're doing on the vocals there. Right, so I got through that one. It was a bit rubbish. I've got a bad back. You'll let me off, won't you? I know I'm not my usual knowledgeable self. That was just a display of absolute ignorance, wasn't it? So far, I've read off the back of the album. This is what you're watching: some guy reading the facts off the back of an album and then guessing at what this the other facts could be. And now, at number 3, I'm going to hold this album up, which is another guilty pleasure of mine. Dave Lee Roth Skyscraper. Look at that, actual Dave there clinging to the side with a beret on, clinging to the side of a mountain. Right, I absolutely love this album. I love this album, and I shouldn't, because it's really the middle of the road sort of schlocky, you know, hair metal, hardly even hair metal. Dave leaves one of my favourite bands of all time, Van Halen. He does the sort of this EP called Crazy from the Heat, which features California Girls and Just a Gigolo. I mean, he's almost digging deep into what people think was Frank Sinatra, but actually I think it's Al Jolson, because there's an aspect of David Lee Roth's vocal performance which I can hear goes straight back to Al Jolson. There's something about it I can hear. Then he puts together a band to rival Van Halen, and that band features Billy Sheehan on bass, the virtuoso. It features Greg Bisonet on drums, and of course Steve Vai on guitar. It comes out, it's an incredible album. It rivals any Van Halen album. The band is unbelievable, they're incredible, and we all wait for the next album to come out. And when it comes, it's this one, and this one's different. It's much more produced, got much more middle of the road stuff, very poppy stuff. The lead single is a track called Just Like Paradise, which is a very sing-along track. I was so deeply into Steve Vai at this point that I really just dug so deep into this album, and I found riches that perhaps weren't there. But tracks like Hot Dog and a Shake and The Bottom Line, Knuckle Bones, Stand Up, Hina, all this incredible stuff. I really love this album, and I'm conscious I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna get to the last two. I don't want to be going on for hours about this, and I'm probably going to do my second video as a Patreon special where I go through my guilty pleasures. So at number 2, I have The World of George Formby, right? I've spoken about George Formby before. He's so important to my personal development, because when I was a little kid, my dad had a ukulele. Now I've gone and got a ukulele here. If I can just pick it up in my back. Right, this is my ukulele here. I will angle the camera down, right? And I will play you when I was about 11 years old, what my dad taught me on ukulele, and it came straight out of George Formby. That was the first thing I ever learned on guitar, thus propelling me forward to the place and position I am as a very respected musician and composer that makes prog albums that nobody listens to or likes. So, and I can only, you know, thank George. Now, I'm going to do a video on George because I haven't got enough time. There's such an interest, so many facts I could tell about George Formby. But there's a reason why George Harrison from the Beatles was head of the George Formby Appreciation Society, because they're so important. He is so important. And the last album I've got is I Feel For You by Chaka Khan. That's my last guilty pleasure. That's the 10. Now, if you want to hear me talk about this, then why don't you pop over and watch my video on Chaka Khan, because I'm not even guilty about loving this, but this is a big slob of 80s produced sort of stuff. But it's absolutely incredible, and Chaka's amazing. I think I'm going to finish there because my back's hurting. I think I've gone about as far as I can. I'm going to have a little walk round, and then I'm going to film some honourable mentions, but they will be on my Patreon. So if you want to check that out, go check the Patreon link and become a patron and all that bit. If not, then you can, you know, I've got a tip jar down. Oh, I'm not going to go off that. You've heard it a million times before. If I'm too ill to be selling myself today, I'm going. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.